and I'm now doing that. So because Laura wanted it to be recorded so we can have that for posterity. So I will talk for maybe 15, 20 minutes, and then we're going to get into just doing. And so all of you, all what you've been just doing now, activating your microphones, video, and we'll mess with those things. And when things get screwed up, I'll talk you out of or through the process. What's great about what we've now done, we've made some changes here in the last couple of days. We're going to be requiring for, I think, all of our Zoom sessions in Encore registration. We hadn't had that. We didn't want to really invoke it for all of them. We did it for classes, but we found that it really is a good control. And some people who weren't of the mind that I was correct on worrying about what's called Zoom bombing and people hacking in have now been in meetings outside of our Zoom, our Encore Zoom land, and have found how disastrous they can be. One of our goals has been to not only protect your privacy, but also your security. And so this is all part of that. That registration process helps us do that. It's also, and I'm so happy, everybody is now putting in their first and last names. That's also part of the security process where we can validate that the people that are in our meeting actually belong. Not that somebody couldn't fake a name, but the fact of the matter is we've now screened that such that we shouldn't have anybody trying to invade. So let me go through now each of these slides. I'll stop at the end with and allow for some conversations, and then we can actually, if you want me to go back and review something, I'll be happy to do that as well. This is going to be fairly freewheeling for as long as you believe you need the help and want to be part of this. So here's our outline for what I'm going to cover. Each of these is approximately a slide. So securing your computer, and that means protecting you from somebody compromising or getting the data that you have when you're on a Zoom session and selling it to Facebook or somebody like that. It's a very simple process, and you could refer back to this slide later, or I can walk you through the process at the end, but it's a very simple process to do that. Your invitation, since all of you got in, you now know how to do that. There are several ways, however, to enter a Zoom meeting, and I'm going to give you some of those other alternatives other than just clicking on what that link would be in an invitation that you might have gotten from Beth or was in the newsletter or something like that. Setting up your smartphone or tablet, those are a little different than they are on a laptop and or a desktop computer. Any of these collaborative software applications like Zoom, like WebEx, are all best managed in computers. And as a matter of fact, what they're seeing, if you watch the business news lately, there's a renaissance of people buying up significant increases just because of this in the laptops, particularly because while phones are okay and tablets like an iPad is okay, they are not as good and as rich and as easy to use as would be a computer. The waiting room, which you've all experienced, I'll give you just a short clip on that only because you ought to know what's going on while you're in that waiting room and why we do it. Working with audio and video, the tool tray, chat, participants, and then when things go wrong, because when things go wrong, that's when you all start Google or sending emails to info@Encore Learning, and then the folks such as Patty or Beth or Donna have to go chasing to see if they can help bail you out of a problem. And we're hoping with classes like this, we'll begin to minimize a lot of that, and it has dropped off significantly since we started. Okay, this is the first one. You could do this now if you feel comfortable enough to keep the display up and also bring up a browser, but if you're not, you could do it later. This is to set it so that your cookie preferences only allow the minimum cookies, and those are little things that are left by the application on your computer, and it's by device. So if you said, oh, I'm going to be on a computer this time and I'm going to be on a laptop or another computer the next time or on my iPad, you would want to do it for each of these machines because this will then protect you. What you'll do is go into your whatever browser you prefer, and in the search engine, put in zoom.us, and it will come up with a web page. They'll look different, but in this case, scroll down to the bottom of the web page, and in general, it'll have a little button down there that says opt out. And I would suggest for everybody, opt out. Then when you refresh that page, that bottom thing will turn into something that looks like this. It says cookie preferences. And so you would then tap on it, and it'll deploy a dialog that looks like this. Now that looks very busy, but it's an easy one to navigate. When you opted out, you made it set so it's only those cookies that allow functionality of the Zoom app on your device. Just that device. Your other devices, you would have to do this also for if you're going to be swapping them around. And then if you decided to change that, you could. But here's the things that are not allowed, or once you have selected just those minimum cookies of the things that Zoom would also have available and or could do with your information and your data. I'd suggest opting out of all of that stuff. So you can do that at any time during today. We're on this, or any time later, but it's just a good habit to get into. Now, with regard to your invitation, since you all got in, you're probably experts at this. This was the first invitation we sent out when we did the first round of this, getting acquainted with Zoom for Encore. You'd open that invitation up. Now, it could be that you had the link in something else. For example, Beth may have sent out an email to everybody, or Donna may have sent something out. So it could be you went, like today, I went to the Encore website. You didn't have to log in, but in the upper left-hand corner, Beth had placed the key events that are going on for this week up there. This happened to be one of them. You clicked on it, and it gave you, or it could give you access to this URL, hypertext, that you would click on, and that launched you into this process. So there's a number of ways to get in that. So this, where that arrow is showing, that's the one that you did. If in that, we've begun to limit a lot of these other instructions that Zoom sends out in their normal canned invitation, just because it's too much information. If you, however, are going to be connecting in by phone, you might need a number. And so this one, when we had this at this time, we had a local number. And then if you were trying to look for it, we normally don't put this up anymore, which is go find some other number. This is a local number that you could just dial in order to get into this meeting. And for those of you that do Meeting to Go or WebEx or some of the others, you might be accustomed to that. Again, the best experience for all of this, for all of our classes, and global hotspots and everything else that we're doing, it is best to use a computer, and it is best to use the Zoom app when you're logging in. Now, if you did it the first time, you may or may not have downloaded and installed the app. It will ask you each time you would get in, if you just entered by browser, if you wanted to download and install it. I would suggest doing it. It's very safe, but make sure you download it only from Zoom, not some third-party one that is advertising to download it, because usually they'll download a bunch of other stuff they'll deposit on your computer, and then you'll get all sorts of pop-ups and things like that. Once you're in, you'll be given opportunities to test your audio and video. And this is a good time, particularly, which I'll talk about a little in a moment, about the waiting room, to test your audio and your video, just to see if it's working. I'll mention some of the issues when we get to each of those subjects in succeeding slides here. And then, again, you're now experienced in the registration process. You can now expect for nearly all of what we're going to do in Encore Learning that process will be repeated. So you'll register for each of the classes, will have its own registration. And once you've done that for courses that we'll have, let's say in the fall, it will in fact be, you won't have to do that registration process again. All you'll end up doing is entering your email address that you entered in that registration process just before coming in, And that's part of the validation process that we already know that we're expecting you in coming into the session. I, however, in general, because I've got so many of these things going on, and a lot of people, as they use Zoom more and more, tend to just open up the Zoom app. So I, have it on my desktop. I double click on it. It opens up, and it asks me. It comes up with a little dialogue that looks like this one here, that's in the background, and I then tap on Join the Meeting, where you see number 1. It then launches a little dialogue that looks like this, where you see the number 2. You can enter then the meeting ID. As some of you might have done today, you could enter your meeting ID right in here. And as time goes on, you'll find that it will remember those meeting IDs. So for classes, for global hotspots, those things, all you'll have to do the next time you open up your Zoom app, there'll be a little down arrow, like a pull-down menu. You can tap on it, and it will give you the listing of the last frequently used meetings that you're into, so you don't either have to have copied the meeting ID down, although that's another way of trying to transfer it and just type it in, but you have it as a pull-down menu. This is also that time to put in your name correctly, and all of you did it perfectly this time. It's readable, it's not smashed together, it's not some silly name, it's your first name and your last name. And those that enter by phones, particularly a smartphone, you may need to make sure you do the same thing. Those that call in is on like a flip phone or something like that, a little different process, and I'll touch on that in a moment. But I would expect that most of you will be wanting to come in either on a computer and or a tablet. We do get a couple phones coming in, but you're finding that the experience is really not so good when you're doing that. When you join in on a smartphone, and you could refer to this later, if in fact you say, hey, my computer's broken, it's not working, whatever, you can get in. You would have downloaded the Zoom app, and you get that from either the App Store or the Google Play Store, and download that and install it on your phone. Double click on it, open it up. It will come up with this panel that you see on the left-hand side. You would then enter where you see the number 1, the meeting ID. That's the meeting ID for global hotspots. And then I would put my name in correctly. This way, when it appears in the participants list, you already don't have to worry about renaming. I've gotten into the habit of, during all the meetings that we've had over the last month and a half, of having to remind people, when they just put in their first name or they put in some silly name, please do put in your first and last names. Again, this is for your safety and security, not for us to be, trying to attendance check or anything like that. Once you've submitted that and you join, all of these should have passwords now. And in general, the passwords will be mnemonics that you could type in. Like, for example, if it was global hotspots, it's some set of alphabetic characters followed by numbers like the year or something like that. We try to minimize the amount of use of characters that can get confused, however, like zeros and O's, like I's and ones, so that in fact you won't get that mixed up. But 2020, if that happens to be the number sequence in there, people generally won't mess that up just because it's the year. And you would enter using the various keypads. When you start with this, you have your number keypad, and then when you have to enter, at least on a smartphone, you would be able to use the numeric keyboard. Now, recognize that again, if you haven't used that keyboard and you need uppercase and lowercase, use that shift key to do that, to enter. All right, next slide. The waiting room. This is a security measure. This allows us to look at everybody coming in, make sure we can identify them. And if some message needs to be sent to folks that are in the waiting room, we will do that. Those of you that were in the waiting room for a couple of minutes, 5 or 10 minutes, got messages from Donna. saying, you know, thank you for being there. And we'll be starting at the top of the hour, giving everybody a clue that, you know, it's alive and not a dead waiting room panel that's up there. So you'll have that up there, and that we're also doing a validation on the folks that are out there coming in. And if we need to send a message to somebody, we can in fact do that in a chat. All right, and then you would enter password. In this case, it might come up to join the meeting, and you would enter the password associated with global hotspots or whatever it turns out to be in order to enter. Probably the next and most important thing for your experience is knowing as a participant, and most of you are in that category of participants. Some of you may want to become hosts and running some of these meetings. We're going to have classes related to that in succeeding weeks here, but this is the one that you're always going to be kind of focusing on. And it almost will get to be a nervous tick where you're going to be looking down in the lower, in general, in the lower left-hand corner of the display. What you'll do is if you just wiggle your cursor on that display, it will launch, it'll wake up a little bar, black bar that's along the bottom. And just so that you know where each of the things that are important are, and we'll cover each of them in just succeeding slides here, to the left side is mute and unmute. It is a great idea and practice to mute whenever you're on and you're not expecting to be talking. You can run a meeting, and small meetings of 5 to 10 people, you know, many of them will be unmuted the whole time, and it's okay. But what you'll find is there's background noises, feedback, a dog barking, a grandfather clock going off, and if the mic is unmuted, then all those sounds are coming through. So this is one you want to check all frequently. The start and stop video, it launches your video, and I'm going to walk through techniques that you want to have once you decide to do that to improve your appearance. You know, some of it is you say, well, they're looking at me. Yeah, but some of it, most of these people get it so that the camera is pointed up their nose. You've seen them on TV. They're in their bedroom, and all you're seeing is the ceiling and the junk that's around, that type of thing. So there are ways of cleaning up that, and I'll discuss that in a moment. But that's your video. You'll also notice that there are little carrots, up carrots next to unmute and also start video. And in those, if you tap on them, they will give you some options for selection. And just know that they're there, and we can talk about those more and later as you're going on. They're very self-explanatory. The middle section of this tool tray is not so much used by you as a participant, with the exception of the managed participants. And it's useful to tap on it. If you did that now, you would have off to the right, you'll have a dialogue or the panel for participants. And right now we have 22 people in here. The people like me that are hosting are at the top, and then it's stacked up alphabetically by person. As you might do something, either activate your microphone and or raise a hand or something like that, which we'll cover in just a few moments, you will move to the top so that I, as a host, or any of the other people, instructors that might be talking, can instantly see somebody and not have to search. Those of you that have been part of our wonderful Global Hotspots sessions, we've had over 200 people, 230 people are registered for that course. So each of the classes are 200. That participants panel is just chock full of names. Share screen, we are limiting people's use of that to just the hosts, or host and co-hosts, and I'll tell you the reason why. I taught using tools like Zoom, WebEx, and Adobe Connect, and the rest of them for many years. And when you allow, I'll particularly say college students, but it could be high school students, it could be anybody else, you allow them to get using share screen as well as whiteboard, they will do it. And they have no clue what they've done, and they usually sabotage a meeting completely. Not that it's malicious necessarily, but it completely destroys meetings, and it is the biggest danger. So when we'll be teaching the course classes for what are going to be our new class aides, which are virtual class aides as hosts and co-hosts. This is going to be one thing that they will have an ability to use, but it's got to be carefully managed just because it is the biggest disruptor of any kind of a meeting. And then on the far right side of that panel, not far right side, but in the center of that panel, you'll also see a chat. And the chat is very useful. We've set most of our sessions up, classes and or global hotspots and other things, so that the chat really only goes to the host right now, because we've been then collecting the messages and then feeding them back to the person who is the instructor. But there's all sorts of ways you can use this and set the features up in it so people can be chatting privately, like passing notes in class when you were in middle school. Here's probably, if I have to say, maybe the most important message, not necessarily the most important slide, but the most important message I need to get across for when things get screwed up. And that is the connection to the internet. If we were to make a tally of all the times that our Encore Learning members contacted info@Encore Learning, it probably was I couldn't get connected, or I got bounced out, or I don't know, something's wrong. All right, so let me give you at least a couple minutes on this, because it is the most important. Your connection speed to the internet will drive your experience. If you're a host or an instructor, it is triply, doubly important that you in fact have great connection speed. Most people have no clue what their connection speed is. By the end of today, you will be an expert and you will be able to test this all on your own. And the simple answer to it is, you bring up your browser, it doesn't matter what browser it is, and you type into the search box, like in Google, speed test. No spaces, lowercase. There will be several little options that will come up. I tend to use this one I like, and most people have agreed with me. It's the Ookla one. It looks like this. This is a web page. Also, if you are on, the Apple Store or Google Play, you can download. Ookla has an app. It's free, and you can download that on your devices. I have it on my computers. I have it on my iPads. I have it on my phone. And you just can tap in to find out what your connection speed is. Now, you'll notice in this one, this was measuring download speed, and then it'll do an upload speed. This one I was getting in at 81.67 megabits per second. That's a good speed of connection. All right. Now, I'll give you some examples, however, what is good and what is bad. Right now, I'm connected in. Verizon is just, since this COVID-19 has started, Verizon has beefed up its whole system here in Arlington, and I am now connected in at 1 gigabits per second. That's 1,000 megabits. It's significant. Is what everybody's been wishing and hoping for of 5G. I haven't seen them advertise this, but I am amazed at how the speeds have increased. If most of you have used Wi-Fi in your house, and so the signal will vary around the house as you would move around. So if you took your phone or you took your computer to different places and you did this little exercise, you will find it's different in different locations. The closer you get to your modem, the better is your connection speed. The farther away you get, and or if you've got very thick walls in your house, those will in fact impact that connection speed. Above and below, usually through floors, it's easier for the signal to get through, and so it's better. So if your modem is in your basement and you're on the first floor, if you're above where that is in the basement on the first floor, you will probably have pretty good connectivity. Even better, however, is if you can, and if your computer or your device has an Ethernet connector port. Now, the computer manufacturers are beginning to eliminate those, but if you can get an Ethernet cable and connect it to the back of that modem as it comes in, there are usually 5 or 6 ports in the back that you can stick that in, it will in fact give you significantly better connection performance. Now, as a user, you don't need great performance. You're just watching, you're listening, and maybe you're talking a little. You can get by with about 10 megabits per second. If you're going to be hosting, at a minimum, you should have 50 megabits per second just because you're pushing. Remember, when you're hosting, you're pushing stuff out of your computer. That's the upload. And most people are generally, over the years, have only been concerned about download. You know, they worry about downloading a movie or downloading an app. And so they only look at that number. So dependent upon what role you have, upload and download will have significance. Download if you're a participant, upload if you in fact are a host or somebody who is sharing something on the session that you're on. Working with your audio. While you're in the waiting room, there is an option for you to test your mic and using Zoom before the session starts. I would suggest for everybody, and again, you're all going to have your own preferences on this thing, the simplest, cheapest thing to get good connectivity, good sound, and good microphone are these simple little earbuds. Anybody that has a smartphone today got issued some with it. Those work very, very well. They're very inexpensive. They have most of them, not all, but most of them have a built-in mic. And the mic is always in the right place. For years, when I taught in virtual classrooms over the last 20 years, I'd wear a headset and I have a little mic that was by my face. This mic works just as well as those artificial ones. If you think you'd like to use headset, that's good. It's just when you start looking at your video, it looks kind of goofy having this big headset on there. And these are not so distracting or offensive. So again, you're seeing these on TV. If you're watching any of the channels where they're piping people in remotely, almost all of them are now wearing these, or if they've got, the network has set them up with devices that are going directly into their ears and the wires in the back of them that are hidden. They're doing that. But a lot of these people that are coming on and commentating are all wearing this same thing. Make sure that your background noise is going to be to a minimum. Now, Zoom tries to help you on this. They have an algorithm built into this app that will in fact adjust and try to screen out these sounds, background sounds. But it's hard when a dog is barking or something like that, or a child is crying to do that. So it's best if you're in an area that is not going to get some distracting noise in the background. And then again, in most sessions that we're having, we will tend to mute everybody at the start, their microphone in particular, and then when people are able to or want to or desire to talk, then we allow them to unmute and they can do that. Working with the video, again, test your camera. Here's one thing that if you haven't tested your camera in a number of years, and I've had to say this, and I did, I think, on this Getting Acquainted session a month ago, was somebody said, my camera is showing, it's not showing, it's black. And the more we chatted about this, I said, oh, by the way, do you have a piece of tape over the camera? Oh, person did. Well, if it's been there a while, you may have a lot of goo that's in there as well, so you may need to clean that out. But in general, the camera should sync up well. It's just one of those things you got to make sure you can start and stop it. For many of you, you say it doesn't matter. I don't plan on being visible. I'm going to be in my t-shirt, and so I don't want to be visible. It's okay. In most cases, and as a matter of fact, for the classes where we've opened this up the last 2 weeks, out of a class of 30, the average number of people that actually were willing to show their video of our Encore Learning participants was probably 7 per class max. So I was surprised. I thought more would do that, but they didn't. All right. Again, I'm going to say this again and again and again because it is the 90% problem that we have. It's internet connection. When you find your sweet spot in your house, that's the place to do it. And that will solve most of the issues that most of you will have. We generally disable the videos for participants because that's a sucker of bandwidth. Each of those little images draws power from that bandwidth, and as a consequence, we try to minimize that. Like for the global hotspots, we got 200 people on, that's a lot of video being processed, so we really don't desire to have anybody other than somebody that might be talking to be visible. You can always disable that. Again, look to the lower left. By the way, the mute and video buttons, dependent upon your device, iPad, phone, and so on, may be in a little different location. Just know where that is. Look for it. In general, you'll be, when you join a meeting, you'll be in the speaker view, and that's the view. Right now, you're in a shared view. I'm sharing a presentation with you, which sucks up the majority of the display, and you're seeing me in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. If I unshared, then I would be filling the center of that display, or anybody talking would be filling the center of that display. That's called the speaker view. And this view that I have down here on the right-hand side is called the gallery view. Now in Zoom, it's a little confusing of selection for that. If you now, not this minute, but once we get, I unshare, and you're wanting to look for how you switch between speaker view and gallery view, it's the upper right of the display. And it might say gallery view, and that would mean that you tap on it to do the gallery view. If you're in the gallery view, it would say speaker view, and you would tap on it to get to the speaker view. It's just kind of reverse thinking, just so that you know that. Now, one other thing you could do right now while we're in this one, and I'll mention it again with another slide, but right now, most of you probably see the black tiles with names stacked up on the right-hand side, or they could be over the top of your display. If you wiggle your cursor over that line of things, you can grab it with your left mouse key and drag it to either above or to the side of the display, and it will stack that up. You also notice that it has some little icons at the top, and I'll mention what those do in a moment. But if you would wish to hide all of those black thumbnails that are there, all you have to do is put your cursor, hover a cursor over one of them, doesn't matter which one, to include mine, and up in the upper right-hand corner, you can see a dot, dot, dot. That's called an ellipsis. And in that ellipsis, if you tap on it, it will give you a menu of things that you could do. One would be, let's say, chatting with, let's say, that person or something like that. Or you can see down at the very bottom, the selection is hide non-video participants. If you select hide non-video participants, that will be a persistent selection for that machine that you're on. So hereafter, when you would get on that machine, all of those little black boxes won't necessarily be showing in that strip. And that helps to clean up your desktop, give you some more real estate to kind of look at participants list or chat box or something like that. Because just looking at the black box doesn't really help you very much. You'll also notice you could scroll to the other members, but by an arrow down at the bottom. And for those of you that are on an iPad, you can swipe, and you'll only get a small selection. I think it's like 9 on a panel in an iPad or a Surface, and then you can swipe it, and you will get the next set, and the next set depends upon how many folks are on. Carrying that discussion on a little more, I had mentioned, and that's why I put this slide in here. I've already introduced it. It looks like what you have now, except right now you may just see me if you've already gone through that. That was an image that I took for what we had was a special event this week on the day the 60s died, and it was a movie. And so I had the riot at Kent State going on in my background. But navigating, you'll see in that image that I've got there, there's this dash, looks like a rectangle, and then there is this double set of rectangles. If you go onto your display on your computer right now, and you tapped on each one of those, you'll see what their behavior is. In general, you'll probably want to have either the one that's the single rectangle, or the double rectangle, or if you want it where it looks like a 3x3, it makes it like it's a gallery view, but it's only got a limited set of images on there. The one that's the dash just gives you this kind of gray bar line. So again, you can select, and again, that's on your individual machine, how you would set that up, and it will persist for any time that you log in. Now, working with video, let's say you want to change your profile picture. Right now, I think all of you, with the exception of Mary, Mary did this, so good. She can teach the class, that'll be good. But everybody else doesn't have their profile picture in there. If you want to have a profile picture, this requires, well, two things. One, you need to have a Zoom account. A Zoom account is free. You just set it up. You Google Zoom. You say make an account. It's free. And so what you would end up doing is setting up an account, and then you will add what would be a photographic picture of yourself to it. When you log in to when you're getting on a Zoom session, you would log in with that account. And then that picture will persist when you now join this Encore meeting. If you go directly into the meeting without going through your account, it'll come up like most of you have right now with a circle, and it picks up your initials and sticks them in there. There's nothing wrong with either of them. It might be attractive and nice to have that profile picture in there. And on this slide, I've given you the places that you would poke at to get this thing launched in order to change that profile. The chat box, my suggestion is right now, go down to, wiggle down in your cursor down in that tool tray down at the bottom, and bring up the chat bar. Both with the chat bar and the participants dialog, that long panel, you can separate those from the Zoom display. I tend to do that so I can move them around my screen. If you like them attached the way they are, just keep it there. But if you wanted to separate them, you go to the upper left corner of them, and there'll be a caret up there that says something to the effect of pop out. And so you pop it out, and you can then, when thereafter, it'll be persistent. It will be in that pop out mode. You can always bring it back in to the being attached to the Zoom display, but it depends upon what you're most comfortable with. That's true for both the chat and the participants windows. Here is where, in the chat window, that you would type in a message. In general, for most of our meetings and classes that we have had so far, we've set this up where it only goes to the host. And then the host, if I'm the host, I will then see these chats coming in, and usually I've rehearsed with an instructor of how we would do questioning, and I would read questions to that instructor. Or it depends, like yesterday with Scott Wood, I would forward specific questions, and he could see them in his chat window. But if I've got a lot of other chats going on in there, like my computer is broken and all that, I wouldn't want to bother an instructor with those things. I might be sending those to Donna or to Beth or to Patty to see if they can give a hand on helping that person out. But that's your best communication, other than, in fact, coming on, and unmuting your mic, which in some cases could be distracting, recognizing you might be interrupting a class if the instructor is in a stream of consciousness. And I've already mentioned this about the participants window. You've already potentially brought it up. And I'll mention one other thing, because we have been starting to use this in our Encore sessions, and that's at the bottom of the participants window. There is this button for raise hand. And that would put a little handprint next to your name, and we'll practice this in a couple minutes here. It would put it next to your name, and I can call on somebody. It also raises the persons who raise their hand with that tool, not raising it in the window like waving, you raise it that way, it bumps them to the top of that participants panel so that in fact the host or the instructor can see that person, and that person, he may call on, Joyce or whoever it might be and say, please unmute your mic and ask me the question, something like that. And this is essentially the last slide, and that's when things go wrong. So that you know, in the case of internet outage, or that in fact internet is becoming weak, Zoom has all sorts of algorithms in there to help balance that feed coming into you. And so it will try to balance it. It will probably, it goes in order, and what it does is it stops your video from moving first. If that solves the problem, then it will try to restore and get better, but it will also then maybe audio will get staccato or broken up. It still will try to keep you connected, and it'll come up with a black bar on your screen saying you have an unstable connection. Just recognize that that's happening. If it drops off, just sign back in. As you sign back into the meeting, there'll be people on, staff will be on, or the host like me would be on. We'll see you come into the waiting room. If we recognize you from before, we'll just let you in right away without any more to worry about. But this is an important thing to know. Zoom will try to do this. Yesterday in Scott Wood's wonderful, great class on writing a symphony, his bandwidth connection was weak, and what it did was it started freezing his image up. His voice would start breaking up a little, but the music, which everybody who attends his classes wants to hear anyway, that took priority, and the music came in loud and clear regardless of whether everything else was not behaving. It'll also it'll reduce the accuracy, the preciseness of the imagery that's on in order to save bandwidth as well. And then when all things go terrible, you email info@encorelearning.net, and while we have courses going on, we have staff that are in fact monitoring and managing, and I believe I know they have been very diligent in getting back, and I think they've solved most of the problems that we've had. Now, I'm going to unshare, so we're going to now be able to see things. All right. I would suggest now that if you've already done this thing where you're hiding all of those thumbnails, that'll have cleaned up some of your display, and right now you should be seeing me. Now, one thing you may be noticing, it looks like I'm in a classroom. I'm actually in my office. I'm not in a classroom. There is a feature, if you want to look at it, I'll walk you through that. Remember I told you about the tool tray. Go down to where you see stop and start video. There's that caret that's to the right of the video camera. Tap on it. When it comes up, you'll see some options there. Most of those options will be sensitive to your computer or your device. They're not always the same dependent upon the device. But there is one option in there called Choose Virtual Background. This is kind of fun to play with. It's easy to use, but you can select it. And if your computer is capable, not all are, if you've got a relatively modern computer, it in fact should be, but using computer language on this thing, you need to have at least an i5 or i7 quad-core processor. It's a processing thing within the computer, and that's with at least 2 gigahertz worth of processing power. If it doesn't have it, just find a place in your background where you're sitting that's non-distracting. Get it so that you are front lit, so that you've got either a light or artificial light or light from outside facing you not coming in from the back. If it's coming in from behind you, then in fact, it could in fact make your face dark, as well as it could be very distracting to viewers on that. And so those are some of the techniques associated with that. So here's what I'd like to do, just as a couple little practice things, and then we'll kind of open this thing up. So first off, what I'd like you to do is see if you can in fact raise a hand. Can you raise a hand? There, see. Now you can begin to see what happens. All of you try it. Just and see what it does. It will bump you to the top. Now, some people are taking and getting ahead of the lesson plan here and deciding to give a thing called reactions. And reactions, if you saw that, that would be, there's reactions right now, there's only two that we have in there, which would be a thumbs up and a clapping of hands. And you could do that, and that would show up in the window associated with that person. I can also take, let's say, for example, we all tested out the hand and everybody chatted and did their things by raising hands. I can take and get rid of all of those as well. So I can lower hands, so I'm going to lower a hand. Or you can just lower your hand. All right? So again, this is a silent way of communicating with the instructor and or the host that you have something that you'd like to say. You can also chat. And the chat is, the protocol on chat is very simple. We tend to get it so that it only goes to the host, but there are cases like, for example, in clubs, sessions or smaller classes that we would have, that you probably would open it up, the host would open it up so that everybody can be chatting when they're doing that. Sometimes that's a distraction. It's going to be dependent upon the audience that you have in the session. All right, and let's see, what else do I need to talk about? Well, let's do this. Let's, anybody would like to ask a question? So that person, anybody like to ask a question, why don't you raise a hand and I'll call on you. Don't be bashful. Oh, okay, Kate. So I'm going to unmute Kate. And Kate, why don't you activate your video? You can tap on that little video camera that has a slash through it, or I can ask to start your video. There you go. Perfect. Okay. Now, make sure you've unmuted your mic. Okay, good. All right.
So I've noticed while we've been talking, there's a recording dot in the corner. Now, I presume that is under your control.
Yes.
Right. That's part of the...
That I'm the only one that can, the co-host can record as well, but I'm the only one recording this session. That's correct.
Okay.
And no participants can record. We've denied that participation.
And then the second question I had is, I've gotten Zoom emails where I just click, but I don't have to enter a meeting ID.
Yep.
So can you talk about that?
I will. That's a great question. That when you click on that link, that meeting ID is built into that link, that hypertext link. And if there's a password, in most cases, it's also embedded within that link. You receive that as a personal communication, so we don't have to go through kind of a double-step process on clarifying that. And so you click on that, and that gets you right in. Now, we've set this up, however, joining our meetings by having a waiting room. And so the waiting room, we put people into a hold pattern, and then you get then accepted into it after that. But the answer, I think that answers your question. Yeah. And you're using earbuds. Good job. You get an A for the day. Good job. Hey, by the way, let me comment on this for everybody that's watching. I'm going to use Kate as my example because it is a good example. She's, I think, sitting probably in your kitchen, and you've got a living room that's in the background. You are centered. Your camera is pointed right at your face perfectly and is properly lit. I mean, it's all perfect. But
Hey,
you get another A for the day on this
I
one.
know.
No,
I needed that too.
no. So it is. Now, for those of you that are down in your basement and it's filled with trash and so on, my suggestion, and that's the place that you like to do this thing, my suggestion is either try the virtual background or find yourself some place that's benign and non-distracting in the background. Because what happens, and you notice this on TV with these people that are coming in on MSNBC and all the networks, they're piping them in right now. And some guy, it was like the other day, this was probably 2 weeks ago, Tom Brokaw. He was in his office, and here's this icon of journalism piled high with junk, and he's laying out with his feet up on the desk or something like this. And I thought, now, this was all wrong. So, pick out the wrong ones and then decide not to do those things. Anybody else want to start activating their cameras? Here's my suggestion. If you want to activate the cameras, let's do this. I'm not going to activate it for you because you say, oh, I'm in my underwear and I don't want to be seen. So do that. And then and if you want, go to gallery view. And you can see that up in the upper right-hand corner. Press on gallery view, and now you'll start to see the population coming in. Now, we only have a half a dozen of people coming in, but let's see. Tom's now very experienced on this thing since he has been one of our great global hotspots instructors. So he went through my special training so that he's centered. He's got a great background. It's perfect. We're going to get John Sprott fixed up by John, get your camera so that it's more pointed at the middle of your face and not to the side. Karen, you're on either an iPhone or a tablet, so you want to get it. What you need to do is maybe jack, if it's on a thing like an iPad or something like that, you may want to jack it so it's more vertical, because the camera is, this is the risk with the phones and the iPads, is they're usually at an angle, and so they're pointed up your nose. Yours is not pointed at your nose, but your chin is like on the bottom of the display. Yeah. Okay, Carol, you are side lit so that you have, like, you can't see one side of your face, but the other side is like bright white. So this would be one where you might be able to take and turn your computer on your desk so that it's pointed more towards the other side of the bookcase. The bookcase, you see, that's kind of a standard background for everybody. Yeah, there you go. Because then and then you get your husband in there too. So, but the bookcase thing is a background. Everybody starts kind of zooming in and looking. What kind of books do they have there? What do they have on their shelves? But usually they're so small, nobody could do that. And once they get used to that, so you want to get backgrounds that are generally non-distracting. Terry, you look like you're in a fog, so maybe your lens needs to get cleaned. Maybe that would be it. Nat, if you were to get your camera so that it is a little more tilted, the camera itself, not your head. There you go. There you go. You want to get it so that your face is about in the center. There you go. Perfect. Perfect. And Mildred, perfect. I don't even have to critique yours. Yours is as good as Kate's is. Good job. Good job. The only thing that you might do, you've got this window that's open in the back of you. Either closing the shade, because depends upon the time of the day, it could be a very bright light coming in there that might kind of be blinding for somebody that's looking at you. And particularly if you were speaking, it might become a big distraction when it fills the center of the display. Okay. Anybody else want to get critiqued? We got lots of people and no guts. And oh, by the way, here's Mary Wolfson has this. She has her photo there, and I went through the process. You could look at that slide. We will post these slides up on the Encore site if you wanted to go through them. And depending upon how the quality of what this recording was, that may be there too. So if you needed to listen to this again, which I will never listen to again, I just had to do it several times again. But you could, in fact, go through that process of getting it so that you would literally have a persistent photo, so as opposed to your name just being there. The name is fine, but sometimes it's kind of nice to have that because it's non-distracting. Now, I'm going to open this up. Anybody want to ask any questions? Kate was the first one out of the box to ask a question. And you can activate your own microphone and or your video. Anybody? Wait, Mildred, you have to unmute your microphone.
I thought I did.
Okay, good.
Are you good?
You'll get practice through this. It'll become a nervous tick. You'll always be looking down to the left side. Do I have it muted or unmuted? You can also look up at your image in the thumbnails, and you'll notice that a muted mic has a little, it's next to the name of the person. It's red with a slash through it.
Right. That's what I just clicked.
Okay,
So aside from the awkward angle of a tablet, and I use a stand because I normally do Zoom with a tablet, is there another downside to a tablet over a laptop?
No. Well, there are a couple things. If you are going to be a host or an instructor, you really can't manage that responsibility from a tablet.
Okay.
My wife and I have several iPads, and she is addicted to her iPad. So she will,
as am I.
she will opt for the iPad over anything. Although she was on a class this morning, and she said, "Well, I think I need your other computer." That's the other computer I have in here, because she realizes that it is a better experience. But the things, for example, if you were a host and you had to record, the only recording that you can do would be to the cloud. And we're tending not to want to do that in Encore right now. One, there's a vulnerability.
Sure.
And so I tend to record these on our own devices, and then we can manage and edit and all the rest of that type of thing. That's really the only limitation. And the other one is, it's just the navigation of the buttons just isn't as easy. I mean, it's on the computer display, it's larger and easier to see. But I use them. I use the iPad too. I mean, I've used it for meetings as well. So, yep.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah. And by the way, you're all noticing when somebody is speaking like Millie just did, that was perfect. When the speaker, like with me right now, it is yellow around it, the thumbnail in the gallery view. So that helps you when you've got like 49 people, which you can get on this one screen. It could, in fact, really clutter up the display, and you can't say, who's talking? Who is that? Well, you can see by the yellow. Anybody else got something? Yeah, Mildred. Activate your mic.
That's what I've done.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, can I, as a host, mute other participants in the conversation?
No.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. As a host, yes, not as a participant. Yes, as a host, you can. So, for example, if let's say somebody went rogue on me right now, I could mute everybody. That's why I would go to the button in my control panel for participants, and I'd mute all. You know, for example, you get somebody who gets on, and there's this feedback. You ever heard that? And
Yeah.
who wants to fix that? There's this feedback loop that goes on. Like, for example, let's say you and your husband were both on in the same room on different devices. You had that happen, and it gets into this whoop, 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 and it starts increasing. All right. It's at that point, as a host, I would hit mute all, and then I would go and I would bring up one of the people, because I could see where that's happening. It's vibrating that microphone on my participants display, showing me which one is feeding that loop. And then I would say, you know, need to one of you just mute. By the way, you know, you can do that. You and your husband can be on in the same room, different devices, but my suggestion would be one of you mutes the mic, and so the sound of you talking is coming through the other person. The rest of it is coming through your head because it's all in earbuds.
Okay, so go back, if you don't mind, to
Yep.
how would I mute everybody? I mean, I'm not sure where I'm going to do that.
Yeah. If you're a host.
Yeah.
All right. In the host, you have some different tools at the bottom of the participant's display that you don't have as a participant.
Okay.
Same thing is true with the chat box. there's just a couple more controls. So when you're doing a family meeting,
Yeah.
I think that's what you're really asking about.
Yes.
Yeah. And by the way, if you want to get help on a family meeting, let's say you've got 50 people in your family. That's an exaggeration probably, but let's say there's 20 people, and you're going to say, I'd like a little help with this one. You can, if you're the host, you can make somebody else a co-host. And co-hosts have essentially the same authorities as a host do. And so we use that technique for, like, for example, our Encore Learning staff, I deputize them all as co-hosts. And so if something goes wrong, I can tell them to, I can send a chat to them, fix that. Will you please fix that? Or something like that. And they can in fact do that. Or they can enter people in. So, for example, there are people coming in there's all sorts of strange people coming in, trying to get into our meeting. I think we're going to, hey, by the way, Donna or Beth,
Marty, I was just looking at that. I wasn't going to admit
no,
them.
none of those people. There's somebody trying to hack in.
Okay.
So that's precisely
Okay.
the kind of thing we wanted to have. I'm surprised. But yeah, but for those of you that you can't see this, but in the host room, we had somebody that looks like they're coming in from China, another one's from somebody else, another from also Danny's iPhone, all the rest of that. So somebody.
Oh, I'm muting myself. Sorry.
Yeah. So this is a good example of that happening. And if you've been on family meetings in Zoom and so on, having that waiting room is one way of protecting everybody on that. Chris McLaughlin, who many of you know is the chair of the special events group, and Chris was having a thing with me about, well, I don't really like all of this stuff, and I said, well, you know what? She was on a meeting the other night where somebody hacked in.
How did you do that?
And completely destroyed it.
Unmuted the speaker.
Okay. So at any rate, just so that you know that. And those people are poking in and trying to do it again and again and again. To try to get in here.
Which is why, just to reinforce Marty's message, it's really important when you're setting up your profile for us to see your first and last name, because, I just removed someone from the waiting room, Karen H. She could be a member, and I just don't know, and I'm not going to take that risk.
Well, and of course, the way we set this up with the registration, just so that you know, because you all qualified to do that when you came in, you were forced to enter your first and last name.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so this is significant. This was very good. This was a great one. Great one. Guys, I've never seen this happen as it was live fire with this one. So now we had some other people wanting to chat. Richard, Richard, why don't you activate your microphone and ask a question?
Okay. The question I have is getting my name on. So right now, well, it was on for a second, now it disappeared. But all the people with their photos up do not have their name on. Okay. In another meeting I attended at, everyone who had photos up had their name in display, whether they were talking or not. So how do we do that? I would like to have my name displayed.
Yeah, no, it should be automatic.
It's not on any of these people in the gallery view.
Well, I'm looking at another display which is just like yours. There's a member of this session we're on right now called Monitor, and it's me. But I'm logged in as a participant, and for every session that I am the host on, I have that so I can see what you're seeing. And in my case, they're all there. Now, what kind of a device are you on?
I'm on an iMac. I use Safari.
You should be fine. Are you in the Zoom app, or are you on the browser?
I'm on the Zoom app.
Okay. I mean, it's an automatic thing, Richard. So I'm not sure.
What I can see is right now as I'm talking, my name appears, and now it just disappeared.
In where? In the thumbnail that you're looking at?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hey, Marty, we've gotten a few messages via chat that others can see everyone's name.
Yeah, I can see
So
them all
actually,
well.
this would be a great time to test out the chat function. Send a chat and let us know if you can see everyone's name.
Yeah. Yeah, Richard, it may be peculiar with something that's on your machine because it appears that everybody else is seeing this correctly. So I'm not sure of the answer to that one. I'm going to find out, and at some point here I'll get back to you when we figure out why that's behaving that way. But we've also got this recorded, so I'll be able to kind of maybe be able to diagnose it that way too. But I'm surprised. So I'm going to lower your hand. By the way, I can lower your hand in your thumbnail. That's why I wanted to do that to see if that was in fact impinging on that as well, but I guess it doesn't. Okay, Pete Taylor, you wanted to ask a question?
No. Yeah, I'm trying to get the visual part going. My picture is not there.
Okay, well,
It says
I'm gonna send a thing that says start video. Do you see
yes, I do.
an
Yeah.
invitation? So is there something for you? There you go. There you're in.
Oh, now I'm there. Yeah,
Now I got to work on your appearance.
in the background. I shaved within the last 48 hours. So
Okay, all right, okay. Well, that's part of it. Good. Okay, yeah, all right, good.
that's my question.
Yeah,
Getting the picture going.
you've got it. You've got it. And what you did was, if you're unable to get it to launch on your own, you might just do what you did. You'd ask the host, "Can you turn on my camera?" Because I have controls for yours as well.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. That's it.
Anybody else? Okay. Well, everybody's now successfully going to be experts in this thing. John, good to see you all. And we're going to have more sessions as time goes on here, but our goal is to get everybody in our Encore family qualified in this. And I have to say, successively, particularly the measure for me has been the global hotspots classes, but the other classes as well. Everybody is getting in so that their images are good, their names are all coming in first and last names. And when you compare that with any other meeting that you're on outside of Encore, you could be now a teacher and instructor on what is quality delivery. So I'm deputizing all of you. Go out and spread the word.
Hey, Marty, it's Patty.
Yeah.
I just want to mention to the club coordinators or committee chairs that we're having a training specifically for hosting Zoom meetings on Monday at 11:30, and I'm going to send out the link for that.
Yeah. And I'm doing that one too. So yeah, we've got many people who have volunteered. Our class aides program is now morphing because of all of this, and our class aides will be really very well qualified as hosts and co-hosts, and that training will start in June. But we'll make all of you. So if you think you got this and you're good to go, we'd be happy to welcome you to the next step level of getting good. And you can see, by the way, Richard's got a virtual background. He's down on a beach, and that's a video one. You can select that. If your computer is capable of processing, and his iMac is, so you go down to virtual background, one of the canned ones that they give you, there's two of them. There's one that's an Aurora Borealis, and there's another one which is a beach video. And that looks like you're really on the beach as opposed to a picture.
Well, I'm actually on a beach. This is an island that we bought not too long ago,
Okay.
and you can see from my hat. It's called the Corona 20 Island.
Okay.
So this is just something we took some photos of. We got a movie camera. We got the whole bit. So that's where I'm at.
And you can upload your own pictures. I'll take you and I'll move you now to. I've now moved to Ecuador. Those are active volcanoes in Ecuador. Or I could go to a library. This is one of the more favorite virtual backgrounds in Zoom land. It's a library in Prague, and it apparently has the most hits of people using it for their virtual backgrounds.
Wow.
And here's the one I used for the Kent State thing on whatever day we did that, Monday of this week. But you can see how you can change your backgrounds. I decided to be in a classroom today since this was kind of a classroom. So you can see how quick and easy that is. And it cleans up all sorts of mess in your house. If you got, other than Kate's, who is perfect. She got an A for her background and her positioning. So good job.
Get over here.
Okay, good. All right, I'm going to end the meeting. We've gone long, and I'm happy to do this because the better and happier you are at doing this, the better we're all going to be. So thanks a lot for joining.
Thank you, Marty.
Okay.
Thanks, Marty.
Very much.
All right, bye-bye.
So then